Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And before we get to our business, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that the lands upon which we are undertaking our revitalization effort is part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation, and that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In addition, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it's home to many First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples today. So with that, welcome everyone. I would like to ask for the meeting agenda. Everybody has reviewed the agenda, I hope. Ian, any changes? Did we decide to make any?
No, not to this form, correct.
Could I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Steve and Leslie, thank you. Yep. I've got next is declarations of conflict of interest, please.
So I'd like to speak to that for a minute or two, Jack, and members of the committee.
Please go ahead.
As you may recall, I previously declared a conflict with respect to Quayside, as I had a business with some of the proponents, although it didn't in any way relate to Quayside or any other Waterfront Toronto project. I've been advised that my development partnerships do not create any legal conflict from a procurement perspective, and I could fully participate in the process. However, to avoid the perception of any possible conflict, until the corporation enters into a project agreement with the chosen proponent, I will not be participating in any board or committee discussions concerning the project, nor will I vote when the matter comes before the board. However, as the board chair, I will expect to be kept apprised of the status of the negotiations, so that I know whether or not the deal is proceeding in a positive or negative fashion from time to time.
Thank you, Steve. Any other conflicts of interest?
Jack, it's Alicia. I should mention item number 5, the office lease update, given that the company that I work for is the landlord for the lease. I will hop off during those discussions. I don't have any insight at the company into those negotiations, but I did want to declare that conflict.
Thank you, Alicia. So noted. Okay, so anything further? All right, then if we could move to the consent agenda, please. We have the draft minutes of the open session of November the 18th. We take them one at a time, or can I take the two of them? I'll take the two of them as well. We also have the draft minutes of the open session of February the 11th. They've been pre-circulated. I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions, comments, additions, clarifications. Hearing none, I will ask please for a motion to adopt both sets of minutes.
No move.
Leslie and Andrew, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, I declare that passed. Then there was also in the materials, you'll see that the IREC committee mandate has been reviewed by Wendy's committee, the A&R committee, and we've reviewed it. It was reviewed a year ago, and I'm just wondering whether there's any further comments. Otherwise, I would be proposing and looking for a motion that we simply renew the mandate, or I guess we don't need a motion. Just any questions or comments on our mandate? Anybody need any clarifications or otherwise? Hearing and seeing none. Ian, anything further on that one?
Yep, thank you very much.
Great. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Meg to give us an update on the project dashboard.
This is your regular quarterly dashboard update, and I usually take it as read, and if there are any questions, happy to provide any additional information.
Are all the members of the committee content with that?
I just have one question, Meg, on the Menke's one on the leasing. is it fully leased now and were they able to comply? I remember there was all those rigid applications of who they could lease to and
Yeah.
things like that. Is that
They've met
all in order?
those, yeah, they've met those standards. I think it was 60% to innovation uses. And Christina, if you can just correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're about 95%
Yeah,
leased.
they're 90 some odd %. But Christina, do you know where they're at currently?
There's only the 40,000 square foot, one floor in the second building that's available. That's it. Other than that, it's fully taken and they've exceeded the 60% minimum for the innovation uses. So they've done well there.
Great. Okay, good.
Wonderful. All right, so if there's nothing further on that, then I will ask Alicia, if you don't mind stepping off, we'll call you right back as soon as we've had the report on the update on the lease.
Will do. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. All righty, so that's Lisa. You're gonna help us out with that one, please?
Great, thanks, Jack, and good afternoon, everyone. Charlene, if I could just ask you to great, thank you. So this item is really just a heads up that we expect to have a future lease transaction related to our office space for consideration at the next IREC committee meeting in early June. IREC and the board are required to approve any lease over $2 million in value, and this will exceed that. Our existing lease for office space here at 20 Bay Street expires in May 2023, so just over a year from now. We've been at this location now for about 15 years. We started off with about 2/3 of the floor, gradually increasing that over time to a full floor plate of 22,000 square feet. We do have the option to renew our existing space at current market rates, which are higher than what we're currently paying. And we're required to give the landlord Oxford notice to that effect no later than the end of August this year. As outlined in the briefing note in your materials, we're also taking the opportunity to revisit how and where we work, and we've engaged Avison Young to assist us in that in terms of assessing our future space needs and opportunities, particularly post-pandemic. We're currently towards the end of our first phase of work with them of 3 phases, which is the development of a workplace strategy. That will also help us to develop a business case regarding location alternatives, and we did include some preliminary information on possible locations in your package. And then finally, Avison Young will provide brokerage support for the eventual lease transaction, whether it be for our existing space here, 20 Bay, or a new location. Just in terms of issues or challenges in terms of the decisions that we need to make, just to highlight that our legislative mandate does limit us somewhat in terms of the term of the lease commitment, being that we wouldn't be able to commit further than a 5-year lease to 2028 at this time. However, we're mitigating that by potentially looking at a 10-year lease with the option to cancel after 5 years, or a 5-year lease with the option to extend, because the longer term would give us potentially a better deal with the landlord in terms of any tenant inducements, whether it be a free rent period or tenant improvements. And then just in terms of some of the other decision points that we're looking at as part of the workplace strategy with Avison Young, it's about considering a reduced footprint potentially, or keeping the same footprint and repurposing some of the space to be more collaborative space. And then likewise, in terms of the hybrid preference for the workplace, whether to retain assigned seating or move to an unassigned seating model. And we have, in terms of looking at preferences, we have surveyed staff just before the end of the year with a great response rate. And so all of that information is being considered as we develop the workplace strategy. George, was there anything you wanted to?
No, I think as Lisa pointed out, as we look at what the model of our functioning will look like going forward in probably more in a hybrid model of some remote work, but also present for a number of days, and dealing with the question of, do we move to a hoteling space for some of the staff? Those are issues that we'll be confronting over the coming weeks and months, and that'll guide us on how much space we need.
So happy to answer any questions the committee or other board members may have.
So is this just, sorry, I should have put my hand up.
Go ahead,
Go
Steve.
ahead. Someone had my hand up ahead of me.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, I just want, is this like just an indication that this is coming up? Or
It is.
any
Yeah.
discussion started with the landlord?
We haven't had formal discussions yet with the landlord, although Avison Young have fairly good relations with them in terms of the right level in that organization. So have already given us an indication that if we were to stay, we could potentially see some pretty good tenant inducements in terms of potentially free rent, or if we wanted to make some improvements, some support there. So there are some early, I'd say early discussions with the landlord through Avison Young.
And what's our net rent now?
Our net rent now is $29 a square foot. So it's fairly good. Where if Oxford's rate, if we were to renew it, market rates would be around $35, $36 a square foot. Some of the locations we're looking at in East Bayfront, including some of our developments like T3, for example, those range between $43 to $48 a square foot. So because that's higher, we'd have to look at reducing our footprint to make, if we wanted to move out into those beautiful buildings. But we're certainly looking at those as options.
Okay, thanks.
My question was around timing. So I understand just the decision making. So it says here the phase 3 lease transaction completed this summer, June. So all the prep. I'm just trying to get the benchmark of when decisions have to happen.
Yeah, so the decision in terms of we've got an obligation to let Oxford know whether we want to renew the space we're in now or not by August 31st. And our lease expires May the following year. So that's the critical decision point, is letting Oxford know by August 31st. We've put in June 2022 because we like to, do things in advance, give ourselves some schedule contingency just in case. So we're ideally trying to secure something a year in advance of when the lease expires, in case we have to do get ready for improvements or moving or anything like that. So we've got some leeway there, and that's the premise in terms of that terming.
So Lisa, we'd be going to the board to update them on the June meeting?
Correct. Yeah. Ideally, we would have the key terms with respect to a lease for approval at the June board meeting.
And one more question. You mentioned the staff had been surveyed. So is that completed now? And are there any insights from the survey that you can share so we understand the appetite for different types of working environments or working situations?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of the survey, it is completed. We had a 98% response rate, so it was very overwhelming. Overwhelmingly, staff, there is a preference for a hybrid work model from staff. We had, 59% preferred working anywhere between 1 to 3 days a week in the office. There was also quite a high percentage of staff that would like to be 5 days remote, about 38%. And then we had another small percent of staff that would like to work 5 days a week. But the overwhelming preference is for a hybrid of say 1 to 3 days a week in the office, based on the survey. And the premise of that was to have purposeful work in the office based on collaboration, and to have the flexibility in terms of not having the commute into the office. Staff appreciate that, and feel they're very productive. In terms of not having that commute and having that flexibility.
So Leslie, as you would know, and I helped lead some of this for the province when we decanted. The pandemic has given us a much more realistic experience with regards to remote work. But one of the challenges is if we have to deal with other questions around utilization of space. Ideally, people, when they work remotely, you have some flexibility of going to hoteling. Of course, everybody's preference is to keep their space and work remote, and that never quite works. So, there's still issues for us to work out.
Thanks. I look forward to the report because it does have a direct implication for how much square footage you think you actually need, how much is shared, and generally speaking, the move is towards more common space, a lighting space, and less private dedicated space.
So there's more discussion to occur there, and we'll have, lived experience that we can talk about. Plus, we'll probably be looking at functional, because not everybody may be treated exactly the same. It'll depend on their functions.
Okay. All right, I think that this is a matter of real interest. So if there's information to be, if it's incremental in terms of when you're, coming to various conclusions, if you want to send out a memo, I'm sure that members of the committee would be happy to have it and follow this process, so we don't have to absorb it all at once and provide our view. That's great. And I guess the other question is there some way, Charmaine or Ian, when we send out the books, that we can exclude this data from Alicia's book? I just want to.
It was.
It was.
Okay, fair enough. Very good. Okay, there anything further questions on the lease process, the lease renewal process? Seeing no hands, then let's go on to item number 7. We have the draft minutes of the closed sessions for November.
Jack, just before we get there, I'm going to invite Alicia
Oh, right,
to rejoin the meeting, and then we should have a motion to go into closed session after she rejoins.
Forgive me. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was going too well. It was going too well.
It's okay. You're almost there.
I know. I didn't misspeak.
And we're back.
Alicia,
Welcome back,
thank you.
Alicia.
We missed you, Alicia. Okay, now with Alicia back, I would like to, and I'll ask Alicia to move us to go from public into private session, please. Seconded by Andrew. Thank you. And then I'd ask Charmaine to kindly turn the camera off. We're back in public session, and if we just wait a moment for Steve Diamond to rejoin us, having sat out the last conversation regarding Quayside.
So, Charmaine, if you could admit him, please.
Hi, welcome back, Steve.
Thanks, Jack. So so I guess I want my status report. Is everything under control?
Good hands, yes.
Touch and go. Touch and go, Diamond. We'll let you know that.
It's all in very good hands, so we're good. All righty. Motion to go to, okay. Are there any motions arising from the closed session?
There are the minutes that we looked at. So there's the 2 resolutions related to the closed session minutes from the prior 2 meetings. It's on the board now.
Right, so I'll ask Alicia and Andrew, please, to move those. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Those motions are carried. Okay, any other business, guys? Anyone else have any other business? Oh my goodness, it's only 2:01.
Nice job,
Very
Jack.
efficient, Jack.
Got an extra hour in everybody's life.
Okay, well then, if there is nothing further, then I thank staff for, again, a great presentation, great preparation for the meeting. You make it easy to be a member of this committee and this board, so thank you. And I'll take a motion to terminate the meeting.
So move.
My pleasure.
Okay, Steve and Andrew, all those in favor? I declare that motion passed and the meeting done.